Well, I am frigging buzzing. Just jetted back from the SCG after seeing a thrilling test match conclude. England salvaging a draw. The veterans, Broad and Anderson, surviving for 12 balls to hold on. And Australia, they hold their 3-0 lead. Welcome to Cricket Daily. I'm Menners. I'm joined by Paul Dennett. Thanks to those that are watching. Paul, I mean, what a game. What a climax.
Yeah, it was a thoroughly entertaining last day. I was watching it with my wife's cousin, who is Scottish, and every chance I have to indoctrinate him into cricket, I do my best. Wasn't necessarily the easiest sell early on when England were just blocking and blocking and blocking. But as the tension mounted, when there was that drop catch of Smith, I yelled, "Oh, he's dropped him!" And he came out from the other room to watch it. So that was pretty cool. And then at the end, I must admit, even though I really did want Australia to win, I wanted the 5-0. When England did draw it, I thought, I can't be too unhappy for... Joe Root doesn't deserve to lose 5-0, and some of those other players, they don't deserve the ignominy of a 5-0 whitewash. So I'm fairly relaxed about the result.
Yeah, I'm very relaxed about it. Obviously, like you, I would have liked to see an Australian win, but I just wanted a thrilling finish. I wanted it to go down to the wire, and I wanted to see something, that 9th wicket. And we saw that when Smith got Leach with 12 balls to go. I was thrilled because, like you, I didn't mind. I'm glad Anderson and Broad, they walk off the great SCG, salvaging a draw. I mean, they've been pretty much shitty tourists whenever they've come here. But for them to get that small little win, and James Anderson has spoken on his podcast, Tailenders, the pain of being that last wicket, and he did describe it pretty well. And I struggle to have empathy for Englishmen, but I do have a little bit. And so look, I just thought it was a great test match at the SCG. People around the country sort of say that rained a lot, but Sydney produces. Last year India's draw, time and time again, the SCG test is unmissable.
I mean, really, if they're being serious, all 5 tests should be at the Sydney Cricket Ground. The premier city of the nation. They should all be at headquarters, shouldn't
they? Do we give one to Melbourne just because they can draw a few people?
No, I think we should give one to Newcastle.
Okay, good. Maybe Canberra. So they doesn't actually leave the geographical area of New South Wales.
They can give one to Canberra as long as they rescind the notion of the ACT and we get to reclaim that part of our land for New South Wales.
Exactly. Well, look, let's recount today's play. So much to talk about. So many highlights, but the first session was dazzling. Zach Crawley came out and, stats. At one point I wrote down he had 77 of 91 runs that England had scored. What did you think of his 77 off 100?
I always get nervous in those moments because me, Menners, I cherish the record of Charles Bannerman from the very first test match of the highest percentage of a team's total, the very first innings of the very first test. So it's very, very unlikely for that ever to be broken. But if it's ever going to be, it would be in a circumstance like today. All we needed was for the rest of the side to absolutely collapse around Crawley, and Charles Bannerman's record from the first test match could have been broken. But,
Slater gave it a good go at the ground in the mid-90s against England.
I know, and I was at that whole test match except for one
day. So was I.
And
Sweet.
Slater was run out, wasn't he? The
third umpire was to give him out, and the Poms will still talk about it.
These days, they're a bit more gung-ho on the third up. Back then, they were like, we'll be very, very cautious. But, and so that's the second best, yes. But, I think that when Crawley was going well and going fluently, I think that people who are going to criticise Cummins for his declaration... Now, I made a slight criticism of him yesterday, but that's kind of like a niche point. My overall point is I don't think that he got the declaration wrong. And I think that had he declared much earlier, then when the way that Crawley was batting, especially if someone at the other end had been batting in a similar manner, Hamid and Milan were barely scoring. But let's say Root was down the other end scoring at a decent rate as well. Cummins, as a captain, would have suddenly thought, don't tell me I've gift-wrapped the test match to the opposition. It would have been a sickening feeling. So, of course, in hindsight, Australia would have liked a few extra overs at the end, But I really, aside from the criticism I made yesterday, I really can't be too down on the declaration decision.
Yeah, Cummins was asked about the declaration just in the press conference, and he said that the SCG, it does not play like a traditional fifth-day wicket. You can still score fairly quickly, and he's right. It happened this year, happened last year against India. So I agree with you. I think, though, he was asked about a few things. Now, so today they lost 7 overs of play because of the rain. So there was the first session. England were 3 for 122 at lunch. Crawley... Hamid was out early to Boland, but he was also dropped by Carey just before that for 9. Then Milan went bowled Lyon for 4, and then Joe Root was caught behind off Boland for 24. Boland 2 of the first 3 wickets, just incredible. So that was in the first session. Carey, you have to say now it's probably worth talking about that he hasn't quite nailed his glove work at Test level yet.
No, and also his batting hasn't been so good. The golden ducky in the second innings, he's probably even more bitter about being sent out about. So yes,
I can tell you Adelaide radio is, because I was on an Adelaide radio station today, and they were not happy with Pat Cummins stitching up their boy Alex Carey. But yeah. And then when I mentioned he'd drop one, they weren't happy either. But go on.
Yeah, you got to ask the questions. But I mean, it's now been what? At least 2 dropped catches, 2 catches that he didn't go for. There was that run out that possibly, if he gloved it better, that could have been a run out as well. So, I think that there are legitimate questions to be asked. And I'm not going to go on my usual spiel of insanity around wicketkeepers, saying that maybe if Cameron Green had been wicketkeeper, he would have caught that first one. But
I mean, the thing that Green just reaches out. He's so tall, he doesn't even have to move. He
would have caught that one on his left hip.
Yeah, he could just stand there and just anyway. We're digressing, and it's a visual gag from mainly an audio medium. So yeah, that was the first session.
But I just want to add that ball, the wicket of Milan from Lyon, that was exhilarating. And I sent out a tweet. It's completely different balls to Warne's flipper in his flipper's heyday of the early 90s, but it had that same sort of feeling of suddenly hurrying straight through, crashing into the stumps before anyone has known what's going on. I love that.
Interesting comment here from Majumba. That Harris drop of Ben Stokes at forward short leg cost Australia the victory. Now, if you're being a hard marker, you're saying Australia dropped, at least 3 chances today? Smith dropped 1, Harris dropped 1, Carey dropped 1. I'm not sure if I've missed any there. So, yeah, you could say, Australia let victory slip through their fingers.
I think that Smith's one was a tough one. It wasn't impossible, but it's one of these ones that's probably going to be dropped more often than it's caught. Carey's one was one that he should have caught, but that probably didn't cost too much in the end. I think Australia's fielding is pretty good, and I don't think that I'm not too critical of their fielding. What I'm critical of, as an aside, I haven't done the maths, but putting aside the rain, as always is the case in Test matches, I'm sure that had the minimum number of overs actually been bowled, then how many extra overs would we have had at the end? There would have been a few.
Absolutely. So, we lost 7 overs today, and Cummins was asked by Dan Brettig, do you think during Test matches when there's rain around, they should, do a bit better at not, taking lunch when it's sunny and stuff like that? And Cummins said, look, on the first day, it was weird. He said something about, they spent a lot of time they put a lot of time aside for the ceremony on the first day for the anthems and stuff, which seemed to take a while. And the inference there was that he doesn't want a half an hour bloody ceremony to start the game. Let's get out there and play.
Yeah. And I think that they have to be careful about making sure conditions are safe. And I understand that when you're not tasked with that responsibility, you can be gung-ho and say, come on. But if you are the one who's next going to be on the line, if someone, trips over and does their knee, I can understand that you're going to be cautious. But that aside, I do think that there is something to let's speed things up a little bit more. And I think it's a lot better than it used to be. Back in the old days, it would rain from 11 till 12, 50 and they'd come out for 10 minutes and then walk off for lunch for 40 minutes. They didn't quite do that this time. That they rejigged the session times, and it was still almost a full day's play on that particular day. So I don't mind them having a full 40 minutes for lunch. But the point I was making is just in terms of the speed of the overs, that had both sides bowled their overs at the right speed, then the crowd would have had another, 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 or whatever it was overs at the end of scintillating, exciting cricket. And so I think that's certainly a point, and it's one we harp on about all the time.
Paul Rifle does seem to do everything in slow motion, though. I loved him as a player. I loved him as a player. I remember when he wasn't picked on the 1997 Ashes tour, I almost had a nervous breakdown. And then he ended up being flown over when we were 1-0 down because of injuries. And, from there, it's another famous win for Australia over England. But yeah.
I mean, if you look at Paul Rifle's test record, if you didn't know anything else and you just looked at the averages only and you compared Paul Rifle to Shane Warne, Paul Rifle actually has a better test record than Shane Warne when you take into account batting and bowling. That's how, he's a very, very underrated player. I'm not saying he's better than Warne, of course, but he's an underrated player. No, I think a very good umpire. It looks like a good bloke.
Definitely. So lunch 3 for 122. Australia have done a lot of good work by then. Hamid, Milan and Root are all back in the pavilion. This point, I'm sort of thinking, Australia got a really good chance here. They're 3 down. And then the rain comes in, sweeps through the SCG, and they lose an hour of play. So they go off at 12:30. They don't come back till 2:10. But then, not long after the break, Cameron Green bowled a searing Yorker to Zach Crawley to get him out for 77 LBW. And Bairstow, what a ball. And what were you sort of thinking about this time? Were you thinking Australia was going to get the win?
Well, I was thinking I'm going to get divorced because we were on a drive. So I was actually listening to it on the radio, and I was chatting to my wife, and I was at the same time as that looking about 7 different weather apps. I had friends at the ground. I was checking every possible way to work out when they were going to get back on. And I suddenly realized my wife had made a point to me, and like 45 seconds had elapsed that I had an answer.
That's the story of my whole marriage. I mean,
and I said sorry, and I looked across and realized that's pretty poor behavior.
I'm surprised you didn't have the cricket on your phone, like the little TV.
I have done that typically, but I've actually realized that it's been so long since I've listened to much cricket on the radio. The last few test matches when I've had an opportunity to do it a bit, it's been quite nostalgic, and I've quite enjoyed listening to it on the radio. I have a little Chappelli watch story at some point during this little show that I'd like to tell you.
Well, I've got one too. I think it could be the same one. Is it you're doing the Bradman impression?
No, I didn't hear that. Listen, Sonny. That's what he usually says.
I'll give it to you in a sec.
Let me guess.
But what were you thinking?
Let me guess.
Yeah, go on.
Was it the one that Bradman was sitting slumped in his seat, and the only 2 financial points, then he sat up straight?
No, I'll do it then. So, no, it was a story about him and Keith Stackpole batting all day at the Adelaide Oval, and Bradman walks in and goes, I can't do Bradman. He goes, Keith, I didn't know you could concentrate for so long. And
is that the end?
That's it. And
so
then
it wasn't critical of Bradman.
No, well, then he goes, Stacky never got over that Bradman said sledged him.
That it's not necessarily a glowing Chappelli anecdote about Bradman, but that's pretty much the nicest thing I've ever heard Chappelli say about Bradman.
he does a good Bradman though. His Bradman is like, you can imagine Bradman like walking in on his A-frame. That's the voice you're sort of imagining to the body to the voice. Like anyway. So yeah, were you thinking when Crawley's out, it's Bairstow and Stokes, they're 4 down. What were you thinking? They're going to save it?
It's an interesting exercise in sort of human psychology because every instinct is, this is just going to be a draw. And yet every memory I have is that 9 times out of 10, this doesn't end up being a draw. The matches, they go on and on and on and nothing's happening. But especially these days where the final session of the final day ends up having so many overs, you so often see a result or very near to a result when it looked absolutely fine. So I was just battling those 2 halves of my brain the whole time. And I always thought it was 50-50 the whole way through the day.
Yeah, interesting. I was, I thought it was just going to fizzle out for a while there because the wicket did look pretty dead apart from that one spot. And I sort of toyed with leaving a couple of times. And so it got down to 27.2 overs left. Stokes and Bairstow are out there. I'm thinking, actually, if these two bat for another hour, they might just call it off. But then, who was it? Lyon bowled a really good ball to get Stokes out, caught by Smith. And then from there, Cummins then got 2 quick wickets.
That was an amazing little spell of Cummins.
Butler and Wood, in one over.
The Butler one was a good ball, given not out by rifle, reviewed and shown to be out. And then the Wood one, that was a vicious in-swinger, crashed him right on the foot. And it was, again, that was watching with my wife's Scottish cousin. And that was quite exhilarating. I was like, cricket's got a chance of claiming him here. That was a scintillating 5 minutes to watch. And then
now we're getting into territory that just drives Paul so giddy with excitement, because Channel 7 at this stage have stopped the news. So we're past 6 o'clock. The whole nation's watching the grandstand finish to the Test match. So Leach joins Bairstow out there. Bairstow's playing a blinder of a match, 100. And then they too. Leach and actually Bairstow look pretty good, and I thought Australia were going to struggle here. Bairstow was marshalling the strike. It just wasn't going well.
I've heard rumours that Leach is going to replace Hamid as the specialist opener for the final test. I could do worse.
Leach made 26, but Bairstow got out first. He was caught in close off bowl, and Labuschagne took the catch. And there was a lot going on today. So Marnus was annoying the shit out of the English. And I've heard Broad and Stokes podcast. They just fucking hate him. Like they're just like, he drives them up the wall. That was going on a bit. But then I
don't know why he does. Like he just seems enthusiastic.
Yeah, English people don't understand that. That's the problem.
No, steady on. But I mean, Warne and
unless they're at an EPL game, a Premier League game, then they've had a few pints, then they know enthusiasm.
Warne and Simons were the same with that when they were hot mic'd and didn't realise they were talking about Labuschagne, and they were very mortified that it went to air. I think that Labuschagne just loves cricket. He's just being enthusiastic. Gosh, there are much worse crimes in the world than that. I like him.
Yeah, same. And at one point, Stokes, again, had a problem with the crowd. Someone said something. The commentators, I don't know what radio station you were listening to, but one was saying it was Warner, but it was actually the crowd. And Cummins came in and said, do you want me to get security to sort this out to Stokes? Which I thought was pretty good of the captain to just come in and say, look, because if Cummins walks over and points at them, then they're out. I mean.
Yeah, I was listening to ABC Radio, and they were initially thinking that it was Lyon, and then they were talking about it being Warner. We didn't realise that it was the crowd till it came out on social media later.
A lot happening. So it's getting really dramatic. So Bairstow goes, Broad joins Leach out in the middle, and then around this time the umpires go to Postman Pat. Sorry, mate, no more quicks. So you got Lyon at one end bowling. He's I don't know, lollipops. We'll get to that. And then so they bring in. Did you know Steve Smith started as a leg spinner? So they bring him, and apparently Marnus and Smith are having a bit of a thing in the dressing room about who's the better leg spinner. So I think they're egging each other on, because I don't know if Smith likes bowling. And then honestly, I loved when Smith got the wicket of Leach, caught slip with the 12 balls after that one. So it was the 13th last delivery.
I mean, Smith bowled well, and you look at that and you just think, God, if he worked on his bowling as hard as I suspect Labuschagne works on his, then why wouldn't you want to be an all-rounder? I don't get that. Like, he's got some talent there. The government should step in and say, listen, Smith, you're spending 2 hours a day in the nets on your bowling, as well as the 14 hours a day you spend on the batting. He looked good. He looked good.
I agree. I think that I remember when I played cricket, bowling was fun. So I don't understand, like, if you're Smith, if you're just going to be out there standing in the field, well, wouldn't you have a bit of a trundle? He's vice captain. I guess, like Michael Clark, bowling seemed to aggravate his back. So that's one of the reasons he stopped. Maybe there's an issue there.
Yeah.
So 12 balls to go. it's fading light. You have Smith bowled 1 over, Lyon bowled the second last over,
Yep.
Smith bowled the last over, Anderson patted out the last over. In the last 12 balls, there was no real chances, but it was, so exciting. Ben Stokes was almost puking on the sideline. I mean, it was just full on drama. There was, I think, 10,000 people there, so it was making a bit of noise.
Was fantastic drama. Yeah, the last 2 overs, they kind of didn't quite get it right, the Aussies. Smith's, the over that he got Leach out was a really good over. His final over was probably a little bit on the innocuous side. But, yeah, it's a pity. It's a pity it wasn't a few more overs of drama, because it was tremendous watching.
So England get the draw, famous draw. 7 overs play lost today, few dropped chances. So you can say Australia, probably just, as I said, let it slip. But Usman Khawaja was the man of the match. After play, Joe Root clarified that Butler's heading home. He's not staying for the rest of the tour. His injury is so bad, so we won't see Butler in the next Test match. He didn't look good out there, Butler. He didn't look comfortable. Yeah, same.
It's horrible. Yeah, when you, it's hard enough batting anyway. When you got an injury like that, it makes it much more unpleasant.
I've heard Butler on podcasts, and he comes across as the most lovely guy. Like, I don't know what he's like. Maybe he's not behind the scenes, but he comes across as like really sweet guy. So yeah, shame his tour ends like this. Maybe his Test career. Maybe his Test.
It'll be interesting to see how presumably Billings will play in Hobart. It'll be interesting to see how he goes. I have a feeling he might do quite well.
Yeah, I mean, got nothing to lose. So Cummins was asked a few good questions. One about Usman Khawaja, and we had this debate yesterday, and he said, it's pretty hard to leave out how can you go past a player that scored twin tons? Like, I think he's on board now that Khawaja has to play. Because if you're a captain, you want to win. So you don't want the player that scored 200s on the sideline. So I think we'll see Khawaja play. And I think Harris will get the axe.
That's great, as long as they don't axe head. I mean, that's the other insane thing that they could do. But again, I mean, if you're looking, if you want to, your point is a very good one. Imagine it was 2-2 and the Ashes were on the line going into the final Test match. Or, as I said before, if you said to George Bailey, your house is on the line, there'd be no contemplation of picking Harris. It's, when the rubber meets the road, you're going to pick the best players. And if they do pick the side as they should, then I've said it before, the English journalists who say, the most galling thing is that this is far from a great Australian side that's beating us. I'd say it's getting on the road towards being pretty darn close to great. Like, if you had Khawaja opening up with Warner, Khawaja with an average into the low 40s and Warner in the high 40s, and then Labuschagne and Smith, two of the highest averages of all time. Head at 5, whose average is well into the 40s. Green at 6, who could be anything, and his first-class average has always been fantastic. Carey hasn't had a great start to his career, but he's a decent player. And then whichever 3 fast bowlers they pick, and Nathan Lyon, I wouldn't yet say it's a great side, but geez, it's starting to look pretty bloody close to one.
I mean, Boland's got close to the best Test bowling average in history at the moment.
I love it. I've gone from being ambivalent about him to being one of his biggest fans overnight. I hope that however long his Test career lasts, that it keeps on going like this. It's been hilariously just so satisfying to watch, and so joyful.
Good, I agree. All right, let me do my good day, bad day. So good day, Jimmy Anderson. I'm giving it to the 40-year-old that went out there and saved the day. So I think he's 39, actually. But, yeah, well, so good day, Jimmy Anderson. Glad to see him leave such a great ground with his head held high. Bad day, Nathan Lyon. I'm sorry, but this is when your spinner's got to take 3 or 4 wickets on the last day of a Test match. I know the wicket didn't break up, but now we're there's a lot of fifth days where Lyon's really struggled. And to me, he seemed to get his pace wrong. Chappelli was saying he was bowling Lyon was bowling too quick all day. And I agree. He was fanging him through. And Lyon's a great bowler, but I just don't think he's not a fifth day bowler.
I mean, I don't think he's a great bowler. I don't know how you can make that statement.
I
He's
mean, I
got
was
an
being
average of
nice. I was being nice after criticizing him. He's like
yeah,
an above average bowler,
yeah, and he's
and he's
I think
played a lot of tests. He's played a lot of tests.
I think his performance in this series has been quite good.
Mm,
I saw at some point they had his average in the series today to be about 25. Probably dropped out a
mm.
little bit today. So yeah, 2 for 88 in the second innings. Sorry, no, that was his first innings performance. His second innings performance, 2 for 28 off 22 overs. It's not that bad.
Wickets win you games, buddy. On the last day, I mean, I just think you need 3 or 4 from your spinner on a fifth day, and I
Yeah,
just don't think he bowled that well. He didn't even extract many chances.
I think it was okay. I thought he was okay.
Okay, he was okay, but no,
Yeah.
I want better. So I
Yeah,
think
no,
I was
I
actually
agree.
thinking. I was thinking. So okay, we know Lions not going to get dropped in the foreseeable future, but they go to the subcontinent. So you then other spinners are going to get a go, whether
Yeah.
that's Swepson or Tanvi Sanger and what if one of them bloody grabs it and just shows the world they're a match winner? Then we come next summer, and all of a sudden Australia have got another option, and maybe they think to Lion, look, if we're playing one spinner, we might go with the leggy this game. Maybe.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting plot this year. I think
Definitely.
hopefully one of these players can really challenge Lion. Yeah.
Yeah, as Steve O'Keefe did from time to time, and they didn't give him the chances that they should have. I mean, I think he's a proven better bowler than Lyon, but Lyon's he's done well. He's done very well. I just think that he's regarded as a great, and that he's not a great. He's a very decent bowler.
Good one. All righty. So we've got some questions. This is from Sam. He sent these via Twitter. Do you reckon they should get rid of Carey, averaging less than 18 with the bat and can't take catches to the right near first slip? Can you answer this question on your daily today? Well, Sam, we can. Paul, would you be dropping Carey for the Pakistan Test series?
Well, I mean, you know me. I'm crazy. If it was up to me, I'd be saying...
No, don't go there. Just answer the question.
Will you answer it then?
Okay, I think Josh Inglis will get a go if pretty soon the way things are tracking.
Okay.
And Glenn Maxwell could keep in Paul's team. All right. Another question comment. Lyon again can't close out a test match on day 5. Would the result have been any different if Swepson had played? Paul, you into hypotheticals?
I am. Look, Swepson was very good last summer, and we saw him I remember watching him at Wollongong, and he bowled well. His overall record is a little bit more modest, so I'm not sure. I need to see more of him to be convinced, but I'm pleased that he's going to get an opportunity at some point in the subcontinent. It'll be interesting to see how he's going to go.
Agree. All right, do you want to ask me this one?
All right, this is from Taran Majumdar. It's a day-night test in Hobart. Should Richardson return to the 11? If yes, should Stark instead of Boland be dropping out?
It's an interesting question. I have a feeling they'll keep the bowling attack as it is. Stark doesn't have any niggles. He said he had a problem with the foot marks on today, so that's probably maybe why he didn't bowl that well or didn't look that comfortable. But I have a feeling Boland. How can you rest Boland? Yeah, I mean, when he's on this run, Cummins is not going to sit it out. So I think Richardson will call his jets.
I don't know about that. I think if Richardson is fit, they will be tempted to rest Stark because of what happened last summer, and that they could say, sure, Stark has that point around the fact that he was struggling with his feet in this match, but they could say we don't want to open ourselves to the criticism if he has a poor test in the 5th test of what happened last summer. We talked about rotation. He's played 4 in a row. Maybe they'd say, let's give you a rest and bring Richardson in if Richardson is firing fit.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, this is from Daniel Gibson. Can we rule out Marnus of any future captaincy chat? The wasted DRS reviews would be off the scale, appealing today when Butler missed the ball by a foot. Exclamation mark. Smiley emoji for those listening.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit weird that he has such poor judgment around that he's so excitable that he seems to see things that aren't there. And I think the thing is, at the moment, he has no responsibility. And you can sort of say, oh, yeah, I think he might have hit that. But it's all of a sudden, if you are the captain and you've got to make the decision, and if you're the one who burns the review, it's going to be against you, you suddenly feel a bit differently. So I think that, he should be encouraged to be a little bit more, show a bit more discretion and not just sort of jump at shadows, for sure.
Yeah, I think Marnus certainly does need to mature just a little bit if he were to be considered for leadership positions, but I definitely wouldn't rule him out. Anybody can mature. I mean, Ricky Ponting was pretty rough around the edges when he started playing Test cricket, and look, he became a pretty good captain. Not like Steve Wargood, but pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule Marnus out. As I said, I can't quite see why he annoys people so much, because I just love the joy he brings to the game. But maybe, some people get the shit seeing people so happy. I don't know.
I think that there's a degree of cricket as being a bit one-dimensional. The old days cricketer, what are the allowed interests of a cricketer? You're allowed to be interested in golf, horse racing, football, and beer, maybe.
Yeah.
Anything beyond that, then you're a bit rare. And so the fact that Marnus Labuschagne loves the game so much, when all of them, they're a little bit cynical, or, don't like to watch too much cricket kind of thing, where he looks like he'd watch it for fun, that I think that maybe that's a good thing. That there's like Zampa and Stoinis as well are blokes that are maybe a little bit outside the normal mold of cricketers, and that's can only be good. So, yeah, I really like him.
Yeah, did you know Cummins does the Sudoku every morning?
So that's the funny thing. That's a completely normal activity to do. Yet amongst cricketers, it's probably like, oh, this guy, he's some sort of Einstein.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it. Michael's just thrown in a question here. Last one. What have you blokes made of Smith's form this series? Hasn't made a ton since the 2019 Ashes. That's an Ashes ton. I think he made one ton against India last year.
Yeah, I think that his form hasn't quite reached that peerless level that he was in 2019 ever since. We've talked about it before. He's getting to that age where, will he ever revisit those heights? I hope he does. And I think that one of the things he needs to do is bat more aggressively. He was doing that in this test match and looked pretty good. So I think that's the way that he needs to play going forward.
Yeah, I think it's a rhythm thing with Smith, actually. I think he just hasn't played a lot of Test cricket, a lot of first-class cricket. We saw him tuning up. You and I did a couple of games. He was playing for New South Wales 2 seasons ago, or maybe 3 now. And it was really noticeable how he was sort of tuning his game up to bat long periods. And I just wonder if he's had that sort of time. I mean, they say the nets, he spends a lot of time in the nets, but it's not the same. So maybe now with this sustained run of Test cricket, as I said, I think yesterday, I'm really looking forward to seeing him bat in subcontinent conditions.
Yeah, Ricky Ponting made an interesting point about the batting of Cameron Green. And maybe that might have been Hamid, was one of the two, but he's saying that at the top level, you can't just expect to wait for good bowlers to bowl bad balls that you can score off. Eventually, you're going to have to start scoring off balls that are halfway decent. I think there's something to that with Steve Smith. He's so good that he feels as though he can play totally risk-free cricket, and eventually the runs will just come. And I think that oppositions realise that and play on that and realise, okay, if I bowl a ball on the 5th stump line at a good length, he'll let it go. And when you're bowling to someone that great, a dot ball is a reason to celebrate. And if you just keep on doing that, he becomes becalmed. And I think that that's where he needs to say, okay, I'm going to have a bit of a more aggressive attitude and take a little bit more of a risk. And I think his natural talent would see him through, and he'd prosper more.
Yeah, I don't know. I just hope he, I said, looking forward to seeing him bat on the subcontinent. All righty.
I just realised I've just given detailed advice to Steve Smith how to bat. I'm probably
that's why I didn't say anything.
Come on,
look, I actually did it to Adam Gilchrist in person, so I'll tell the story for those that haven't listened. So I was following the 1999 World Cup, and I ended up in the Australian team hotel on the night after Australia had beaten South Africa in the Super Six game, where Steve Waugh scored that majestic 120 not out. So me and a mate are in the bar, all the Aussie teams there, and I go to take a leak, and Adam Gilchrist turns up next to me. And at that point, I decide to tell him, I think he needs to get on the front. We're taking a leak, so we weren't doing it with penises in our hand, just to get the image right. So we wash our hands. And then I say, I think you should get forward on these wickets. Obviously, I was a few pints in. And then when he walked away, I realized the stupidity of what I just said. A bit like you just then. And I, obviously 20 odd years later, I haven't forgot.
Yeah. Doesn't mean it's wrong, though. Doesn't mean it's wrong.
No, you've got to get forward in England. All righty then. Well, I think that's it.
I mean, he didn't do all that well in the semi-final, but he succeeded dramatically in the final. And he did get quite forward, as I remember, to the Pakistani bowlers in the final. So you probably won us the 1999 World Cup.
Look, it's a good way to end the podcast. All righty. Well, thanks everybody for listening. That's it for the SCG test. So Hobart starts on Friday. So Paul and I will have to have a chat about this because it's another day-night test. So yeah, it's some late nights recording.
Could be fun.
All right. Thanks everybody that's listened. Congratulations, England.